All right, everyone, when you think of Trump campaign promises, some of them he's done all right with and others he's trying. Like the wall was one of the big ones. The wall, cracking down on sanctuary cities, preferably not starting a nuclear war. He's done really good on that one. Tax reform he's already done and may go even further. Getting rid of some regulations. On the ACA, he faltered, although he got rid of the worst part of the bill, which is basically the mandate. That 2.5% income tax there, by the way, I'm loving it. I can't wait until I see how much lower the taxes are next season as opposed to this season simply because of that. It's going to be quite remarkable. Save a couple grand probably. So yeah, thank you, Trump, for the extra money. I promise to I promise to put it to good use because I can put it to better use than the government. Let's face it. But as far as his medical reform sort of proposals now, it's mostly fair health. Is basically it's lukewarm because one of the biggest elements is missing. Now those were his big campaign promises. Healthcare reform, other than the ACA sort of insurance side of it, was a lesser platform. It was important, and there are certain groups of people that are like, well, medical costs are sky high, you need more competition. Everything's there that he needs except for one critical thing, and unfortunately that one critical thing is one of the biggest ones, which is the ability for Americans to import foreign drugs. Because they simply cost less. If you allow the importation of foreign drugs, yes, for the pharma companies it means, yeah, their stocks will slide, their profits will fall, oh no, it'd be terrible. Okay, understood. For the average American, assuming that they need, asthma medication or whatever, it's great because what'll end up happening is the free market fixes all. If you have total internal competition, you get government out of things as much as possible, costs drop a little anyway. What's happening now is that because you have an internal pharma monopoly within the United States, they can jack the prices up on goods and services as much as they want. As soon as they lose that monopoly and they're forced to compete on a world market, costs within the country for U.S. drugs will fall significantly. Most people will, by the way, still buy the U.S. drugs even if they're paying a few cents more. But they're not going to pay a few $1,000s more for, this one. This needle costs $50. This asthma inhaler costs $200, whereas you can get it in, you can get in Cuba for like 20 cents. And those countries, by the way, they'll be more than happy to manufacture them through the roof to sell to Americans at just a little bit of extra cost because it has to be shipped, by rail or plane or over the ocean or something. It would be great. It would dramatically lower the price, the cost of these things. But unfortunately, he's not actually proposing that. Now, that was originally something he had said might happen, but he is going to increase competition within the actual states. That's good. That'll help at least a little. It'll hold costs down slightly. Not a huge thing, but it's something. It is an improvement. There will be a little bit more ability for government to get out of the way and allow private marketplace to actually function the way it's meant to function, but it doesn't contain that one critical element, so it hits the right marks. You've got the New York Times write-up, archive link in the description. They go, yeah, it's falls short, it's kind of watered down, but it's okay. They don't even have any major complaints about it. The day that Trump proposes something significant and the New York Times isn't saying that it's evidence that he's a Nazi or that he's off his rocker, it's a good day, actually. Right now, they're sort of holding back, I think, mainly because of those Korean prisoners or the fact that the Iran deal has been scrapped. And again, like I've said, I may not give a fuck, but for the average American, they strongly support getting rid of the Iran deal. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem next week, that's going to be a victory for Trump. Again, I may think it's like, who cares where the embassy is? This is purely symbolic, but it's more than symbolic for a lot of voters, especially a lot of center-right but religious individuals that weren't fully on board with Trump. So sort of the average never-Trumper, a lot of them seem to be evangelical voters. Most of them got behind him, but a lot of those holdouts were the Mormons, basically, because of Mitt Romney not endorsing him for the most part. I seriously think that that's why his threshold in Arizona and Utah and some of these states is so much lower. Why is people like Nate Silver thought that Arizona might go blue, and I was sitting there laughing my ass off. Georgia might go blue. It's going to do it this time. Like, yeah, the Clintons have an advantage in the deep south, but Trump has beaten that out of her for the most part. She won't even go and talk to the average person, the average voter, so it doesn't really matter. So his reform here is an all right thing, but one thing that we need is the ability for people to import foreign drugs. I think that that's a good thing. Now, some people say, well, that'll endanger a lot of jobs in the U.S. Okay, temporarily. Then costs will drop by those companies because they are trying to compete in a capitalistic fashion. If you have only a handful of monopolistic corporations that are the only ones that are allowed to make and sell these things, they will fix prices. It is a monopoly. It is a trust. It should be seen as a trust. Monopoly is one company corners the market. Trust is multiple companies come together and basically don't compete with one another, and they all carve out their own niche and agree, essentially non-verbally agree in spirit, hey, we're just not going to cut in on one another's good things. We're basically like the mafia now. That's essentially what we've got in this country for a medical care system. I think that's the problem. The problem is, as well, it costs $1 million and $1 million in liability insurance to practice medicine. That can be a little bit of a problem. Why do you think it costs so much? You don't have insurance. You go for a general checkup. How much do you think it costs? Even with insurance, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Unless you got one of those really cushy plans that rich people have. Unless you're in Congress and get free medical care. Yeah, if you're in Congress, you don't have to worry. I think that Congress should generally be subject to the same situation as the citizens with regards to legalism. I think that they should have to follow the same rules. They should buy their own health insurance. That should have been part of the ACA. Part of it would be, hey, Congress in passing this agrees to get rid of their taxpayer-funded health care for them and their families and staffers. Nope, government workers too. You've got to go into the regular private marketplace to get it. That would have been a good idea. So yeah, it's a lukewarm approval, I suppose. No, for the most part, I think government should just get out of it as much as possible. I would go down a more libertarian route than even Trump's, original proposal, which did cover importing drugs. I think I'm like this. Let's say I want to build a garden bed and I need a bunch of bricks or some wood or something. That bricks and wood can come from another country. There's no real problem with that. But if I want medicine, it has to come from within the United States. I remember years and years ago, this was an issue even back in the Bush era. It was an issue even before that, but sort of the time that I was more cognizant of politics sort of coincides with the very end of the Clinton era. When I'm like, what was I, 10, 11 at the time. Then into the Bush era, going to middle school, maybe a little bit more politically minded than, when you're a kindergartner, it's like, oh, look at this bird. Look at the pretty flowers. I want to go play video games or something. But anyway, I can remember on TV, for a while they had stuff, especially for elderly Vermonters, because you got to realize we have a border with Canada. Elderly Vermonters especially were going up to Canada to get their drugs. And then they were, bringing them back down. They can do that, but the problem is you can go to another country and get medicine. I think of Michael Moore in his Sicko documentary, which is it's haphazard with the truth, but, and it's obviously from a far left, a communistic perspective. But you can physically, if you want to, and this was back during the Cuban embargo days, you can go to Cuba and get a case of inhalers for $10. You can absolutely do that, but you can't get it shipped here. You can't get it shipped in for your doctor directly in your pharmacy to dispense them to you. Those will be U.S. drugs. Hell, even getting generic drugs is difficult. Why do we have such long patents on drugs from the get-go? It doesn't make sense. If you simply reformed those laws, you could drop the price significantly. Oh yeah, you can get your generic alternative. You've just seen the difference probably if you've ever been on any medication at all for any reason. Just the brand name alone jacks the price up sometimes 1,000%. Just by the fact that it's the brand name drug. And they only allow generics for certain types of drugs anyway, and the pharma companies fight tooth and nail. With their enormous profits, they can grab up the lobbyists to go to Congress and say, no, our company will fail. We'll have to lay off 1 million workers if you make a generic available. We will have no profits whatsoever. Yeah, because you'll be competing with something that's actually priced appropriately. That's the problem. A little intervention in the medical system in order to prevent maybe a pandemic or something or some major problem, that's one thing, but micromanaging everything and creating a de facto internal monopoly, it obviously doesn't work. Go back 100 years, we already had, a rudimentary medical complex and, people didn't have, you look at the prices of both drugs and of procedures and even hospital stays. in some of this old quack medical literature that I've gotten. Some of it's only quackery because it's like, gunpowder is a war remedy. Okay, it's not really medicinal they were using it for people who are exposed to like sewer gas. So, hey, eat this gunpowder tincture. It will cure you of your sewer gas brain death. Not really. Some of it was quackery. But if you look, even what was then a fairly standardized medicine, they did have an understanding of, semi-modern medicine minus computers and robotics and some of these other things. I didn't think they didn't even have antibiotics at the point, so you keep that in mind maybe. Well into that period, though, it was cheap to go to the hospital. You weren't going to have to sell your home in order to get a heart valve transplant. It wasn't going to happen. You were able to pay for it, generally speaking. Another part is we need better preventative medicine. A lot of it boils down to a large proportion of our population eats nothing but shit, gets no exercise whatsoever, and part of that is work-related. They go to work, then they get home, they're already tired off their ass, they don't feel like exercising. They don't get out into nature, they live in smog-filled urban areas. Yeah, you're going to have a poor general public health. Thankfully, smoking is going away. Like, that's becoming less common. Then they're attacking vaping, which is one of the biggest reducers of smoking so far. It is less, by the way, dangerous than smoking. That is a fact. They can claim that it's not, talking about popcorn lung from a bad batch all they want. It is more safe. I just quit cold turkey. By the way, I'm still a non-smoker and always will be. At this point, it's like if you go back to it, it'd be pretty dumb. But yeah, we've got public health problems up the ass, and then you've got an internal monopoly. It's the perfect recipe for a shitty healthcare system. It's no wonder we have problems. That's about all. Peace out.